Patrick, why don't we just start first with just introducing Clean Choice Energy, and who you are, your business model, and then we can get into how what you're doing on the marketing and personalization front fits in.
Sounds good. Thanks, David, for the intro. Thank you for being here. So Clean Choice Energy is a retail energy provider that's primarily focused on the northeast of the U.S. And we offer 100% renewable energy to households in 8 states. And we have a very interesting kind of almost like a direct-to-consumer, farm-to-cable, as we call it, model, where we develop our own utility-scale solar farms, so we can kind of bring 100% renewable energy directly to consumers. And yeah, it's a really interesting business. I have a little bit of a background in financial services, and energy feels very similar. It's regulated, and it's also very kind of quantitative in how we produce products, energy products that are tailored to our customers' needs. Yeah.
That's great. So, Patrick, and just in your role at Clean Choice?
So I am the senior vice president of marketing. I really do view our role as kind of a retail energy provider as a very marketing centric, customer centric business model. So I definitely have very much a business hat on when I think about our brand, our customer experience, pricing and product, as well as our marketing and sales channels as well.
So you've got the whole customer agenda in terms of how somebody actually perceives the value proposition. And, it's an interesting value proposition because for a lot of people, this is a new concept, actually deciding that you want to get your electricity from an alternative provider. I mean, it's a relatively new in the longer scope of things. And so you've got, in some respects, a two-part sale. You've got to help somebody understand what this is and how it works and that they can make that choice, and then get them to choose and choose Clean Choice. How do you think about the marketing strategy there? Is that an apt description, or am I totally off?
No, that's spot on. And I think it's a good cue maybe to take half a step back and maybe just describe what deregulated energy actually means for those unfamiliar. So I appreciate that. For most folks, you know who your utility company is. And so, in New York, that might be, Con Ed, for example. And so that's kind of the default, right? So you switch on your power, and that's who the service provider is. And so in specific states, it's deregulated where you're not obligated to buy your energy from that company. You can go with an alternative. And um, for Clean Choice, part of the core value prop is that if you're just sticking with your utility, you're using the kind of the general energy mix, which includes fossil fuel generated and stuff like that. And so we're providing an option to consumers that want to be 100% green, but also maybe folks that don't want a construction project on their roof. They don't want to, build their own solar. They want access to that. And so, yeah, I think from a marketing perspective, there are two things, right? There's the category, are people even aware that this is an option that's available to them? And then obviously, and once that kind of awareness is there, then there's the more traditional, competitive, consumer marketing where, how do we get people to choose us over somebody else? And I think that also has two dimensions for Clean Choice, right? One is how do I identify people that are interested and demonstrate value of being 100% renewable, which right now it's a premium product. It is more expensive than just sticking with your utility, generally speaking. There's times when it's not, but generally it is. And then also convincing people of that value, demonstrating that and creating that in various ways around the customer experience, because ultimately this is still a commodity business. And that's something that I always say too, is electricity is just this invisible physics concept. So it's not something that you can walk around and be seen wearing or holding or something like that with many other consumer products.
So there's some complexity here in terms of getting consumers' minds around it, but you also talk, and you've repeatedly said, Patrick, customer experience. So not just getting them to buy, but the broader customer experience. How do you think about the customer journey? So how are you trying to strategically design a customer journey from, awareness down through consideration, conversion, and then your ongoing relationship. How do you try to manage that?
Yeah, so we have a customer journey data model really that's called the PLAC model that we use internally. So thinking about prospects, leads, like the account, like the actual applicant, like when they're signing up, and then customer. And we think about how we optimize that experience across all those pieces. We're organized that way. The marketing department, I have it organized. One set of teams is focused on acquisition, getting people to that, fill out that sign up form. And then
Mhm.
our life cycle team picks up from there and making sure that what they get from the sign up process and onto the kind of onboarding, and then when we think about renewal and retention. And so I think one of the big North Stars for us is about making it easy. So I think whether that's just making the sign up process as seamless as possible, just making our interactions with customers very straightforward, and just thinking about like those touch points that we can own with the customer, which is nice. But also just the general positioning. It's easier to sign up for our product than it is to put solar panels on your house, or if you live in an apartment, you don't really have
Yeah.
that option. So this is an easy way to make sure that your household electricity consumption is 100% renewable.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And that's a lot to convey, but I'm sure there are differences in how people consume that information, how they think about that, whether they are in an apartment or a private house. And we're on a webinar sponsored by OfferFit, so clearly there's going to be lots of variations that you're managing and that you're testing at scale. So how are you thinking? Let's start with acquisition, in the prospect and the leads part. How are you thinking about bringing personalization, multivariate testing? Because I'm sure there's lots of combinations to figure out what's in general an average the best pitch to use, but you want to tailor it to the individuals. And so, how are you thinking about that strategy for testing?
Yeah, so I think traditionally Clean Choice and other energy providers usually trying to structure like a lead product and a lead offer that you feel like it fits the a broad segment of customer needs. And that already varies, utility by utility. There's just different energy dynamics and stuff like that. So um, the simplified version of our business starts with maybe 50 different lead offers. Um, but I think what we've really kind of oriented around and realized is that different consumers have different energy consumption patterns and different needs, and it's pretty complex. But effectively, looking at how people use energy on an hourly basis, how do we construct products that kind of simplify that, create it one fee, like one rate for a fixed contract, to make it easier for them to manage their energy usage and their energy bill. And what we've done is, recognize that there are so many different customer segments out there that, and, really, not quite one to one yet, but like micro segment level, generating different products and different structures to make sure that we're getting the right customer, the right product to the right customer. And so it is about finding what's compelling to people that they're interested in selecting us versus something else, getting them on the right product that they want to stick around on. So how do we address, retention as well? And right now, what we're doing specifically with OfferFit is doing personalized offers and basically merchandising on our website at the point of acquisition. So a customer can come to our website and look at what rate is available to them, and that's something that's personalized to the prospect. And it's been really interesting. Now I think we run about 1,800 price points at a time, across, and there were, right now we're refreshing them monthly, but I think there's opportunities to refresh that even more dynamically, as we kind of increase our kind of velocity there. But yeah, it's really interesting about how we can, use basically do very complex A/B testing at scale, because of the offer fit functionality we have operating on our website.
So a lot of marketers, it's amazing you're able to manage that many offers because a lot of marketers, I mean, just in and of itself, having a database of all of those offers, forget about the testing part, just simply managing all of those and making sure they're valid. There's a fair amount to that in and of itself. So in terms of coming up, let's just start with that before we even get to the testing. In terms of actually coming up with the offers and populating the possibilities, do you have a team who's just doing all kinds of modeling of different scenarios of how people would be consuming electricity? And then given their geography and the cost in that geography, you're coming up with the possibilities because that's essentially your content, as opposed to, in an ad, having different creatives and different text. For you, it's the actual offer. So how are you coming up with those in the first place?
Yeah, so it's a combination of different departments and teams. I think so first we have like our wholesale team. So that if you think about that as like the manufacturing or procurement arm of our business, so to speak. So
Hmm.
there we're getting, just really detailed and tailored cost data. So we can look
Hmm.
at like different segments of customers in different geographies and what the cost to serve is there. So that's kind of the first input. Then we also partner really closely with our data science team. So we're looking at all our past customers and what do we understand about their attrition or renewal behavior, and also just, different patterns around consumption and how people use energy. And then the last piece is, between our channel marketers and our marketing analytics team. How do we turn those into offers, and just measure how things are performing over time. And so, um, you know, one one way that it can maybe bring this to life a little bit too is, if I say, a product might have a rate of 10 cents a kilowatt hour, that value in and of itself is not really informative. I think you have to put in the context of what the utility charges or what competitors are charging, or how that turns into what someone's monthly bill might be. And so there's all these different ways of articulating what 10 cents means in that context. And that is like all of those factors go into constructing like what the available pool of offers can be. Um, and as far as like actually managing it too, actually uh reviewing things myself. Even we're still a
Hmm.
relatively small shop, given the size of our revenues. But it's something that is rules based, where we have guardrails and parameters that are put around it, so that we make sure that you know the just yeah, I guess like the available offer bank, as we call it,
Hmm.
from which OfferFit has full discretion to select from, is just all within the parameters that we need from a profitability and risk management and all those elements.
Hmm. So you mentioned a lot of different skills working together. This works with that, and so on. How do you literally do it? Do you have small teams, cross-functional teams? Because one of the things we talk about in personalization is agile and having small cross-functional teams who are working together. So you might have, for example, a marketing strategist, data scientist, in your case, maybe procurement. There's a few others you mentioned, all literally working together as a team, trying to get offers out in, let's say, 2-week time frames, and managing that in a very active day-to-day way. How does your team actually work together? Is there something that helps you make it faster, make it really bring the cross-functional nature together? Is there something in that people can learn from?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think what you're describing is almost like just the de facto way that we operate at Clean Choice.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe just like to give some context, that we're, we we do somewhere around like $250 million in revenue a year, but we're a team of maybe 130 people across all our departments.
Hmm.
And so if I think about data science and wholesale and marketing and the folks that would, be, the day-to-day operating team, we're kind of naturally agile and naturally
That's great.
cross-functional just in general how we operate. Um, I think maybe something that can be a little bit more generally helpful, I think, is having kind of the weekly or biweekly cadences. Sorry, I think I'm too still in here. Weekly or biweekly cadences, um, where we just make sure that we go, function by function and are very much aware of, how to collaborate. And I think there's something that can like silos can be really challenging as far as either creating smooth processes or being able to move fast. And that's something that we're able uh, to combat, I think, just because we have an understanding. I understand how your process works, so you understand how mine does. And so we can
Hmm.
get that handshake and that handoff clean. And so I think it is about making sure that you have like those periodic cross-functional meetings where you're checking in and be like, hey, I'm making a change. Does that change anything for you guys?
Right.
Oh, okay, wait, I'll hold off, let's coordinate, and then we'll make that change together or something like that.
Yeah. So in that process, there is a fair amount that needs to come together. Is anything automated? I mean, we know you're using OfferFit, but are there other automation tools you're using in that process?
Yeah, let's see. So a lot of our like a lot of like our data and analytics stuff. So our ML ops, we have Snowflake running and pulling all our data in. Our overall MarTech stack includes Braze,
Hmm.
Segment, um, front end is commerce tools. So yeah, I think we've got I think we have a pretty good, modern MarTech stack in the sense that it's a constellation of point solutions that are working in harmony. Um, but yeah, and then we have, our kind of our homegrown CIS that just manages some of the core operational pieces.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think we do have a really good MarTech stack that helps us manage everything from capturing the enrollments and interacting with customers on the web or otherwise, all the way through, our processes that help us, generate our customer communications and then also just all the nuts and bolts operationally about how we coordinate with the utilities just to do all the billing and everything as well.
Yep. So important as that all gets linked is the data and the data flows across all those tools. And you mentioned customers come onto the website and you personalize for them. Clearly, personalizing for them is driven by data. So, if somebody just comes to the site, what data do you have? Are you very deliberate in a strategy to ask people questions to get you more zero party data because you don't know who these people are? Are you using, domain lookup to try to find geography? Because this is an issue that a lot of marketers have in terms of anonymous visitors to a site. And what is the basis for personalization? Is it just based on the source that they came from? Is it based on, can you get some questions answered? Are you trying to figure out who they are through other identity stack capabilities? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it is. I kind of view it as pretty straightforward, but I think the main thing is in order for us to make sure we can present the appropriate offer, even down to just knowing the right utility, we ask people to put in their zip code. So
Yep,
that's like
of
the
course.
main
Yeah.
the main piece, and so from there we get a lot of information, and then the rest of what we were using to create the micro segments that at the level that we personalize at, we are looking at some metadata, like we know device and also obviously the UTM parameters from which the traffic came. So I think it's the combination of those factors that we currently use to do that. And I think part of our roadmap is we can get the engine running even faster and more personalized by by, getting a more personalized quote by even just getting people's address up front. That
Yeah.
that that then that just all linked to a wealth of information. So, when we think about some of our other channels, right? So if we think about some of our other marketing efforts, we have proprietary like propensity models and customer value models that the data science team has put together, super, super wide data sets. And so also we're able to incorporate that as we make, you know, continue just to rapidly test and learn how to better tailor and structure products for the prospects as they're coming. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would bet, I mean, zip code gives you a whole lot of general geo demographics about someone, but you would need address to understand things like, are they in an apartment building versus single family home? I would bet that would be a factor too that you'd want to ask about.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think there's a lot more that gets tailored to like the very specific consumption patterns and stuff like that. And so I think it's great because I think there's always the next, data point to layer in where you're making those incremental decisions about uh how, how much engagement do you want up front before making that personalized offer. I think right now we're able, like, I think we can tailor it quite a bit from the jump, and so I think it's a great leap forward from how we were doing it previously. And then I think just about like how do we refine and just further and further tailor and test into to make sure we get the right product in the right customer's hands.
Yeah, and testing what questions, because I can imagine asking questions like, do you work at home? So therefore you're using energy on air conditioning or other, 20, all through the day, versus is your apartment, is your home vacant during the day? Although people might feel from a security standpoint, they might not want to tell you that. So yeah, there's I'm sure plenty of questions you can start experimenting with to see what people would tell you and whether that has an effect on the offers.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's interesting, like how to I think giving customers the option of further engaging is interesting too, right? So, you want to be able to, um, you know, give the best fit or the best tailored option based on what you know. And if someone's really keen to really get a really tailored product and happy to answer more questions, you want to give people that option. But I think it's good to think about, I guess, making it easy, right? As one of our tenants, what's the quickest way to get a tailored offer in their hands?
Yep. There's some questions about measurement and continuous feedback and measurement. How are you monitoring and do you make adjustments in offers as you're getting feedback, or is that some of what OfferFit does based on, pulling from the library of offers that it can choose from?
Yeah, yeah, a great question there, Russell. So I think I'm trying to take a step back here. So I think the first thing, as far as the offer fit functionality, right? We were very clear about how to, what's the metric on which we're optimizing, right? I think but with anything around AI, you want to make sure that it's very well defined and measured and understood. And so we put a lot of work into tightening up the feedback loop, because I think one of the big things is really that velocity of feedback, so that we're making the best decisions. So the the actual set of offers and parameters is refreshed daily, and so the feedback loop is key. Like, it's constantly learning and making adjustments, which is pretty awesome. Um, and so one of the things that we needed to do was we had to actually generate a new customer lifetime value model that could estimate things closer to the point of sale. So without going too much of
Yeah.
a side story, but I think it's interesting. Our normal processes wait until the customer gets their first bill to use that data to generate a lifetime value estimate. And a lot of our reporting and decision making is driven off of that. The problem is that in our business, some customers that can be very quick, 3 or 4 days, other customers it can be 30 days until they get their first bill.
Mm.
And so we need to figure out how to shorten that
Yeah.
feedback loop And so we generated like a new estimate based off of slightly different data, and we built the data pipelines so that it was just very fresh data and feedback loops, so we could quickly respond to changing market conditions and things like that, or competitive dynamics as well. And so the way that we're monitoring it, I think, is twofold. One is we have automated dashboards that are looking at the front end metrics, and just, we can kind of, that's live and you can click on it and check things out. And then we also do periodic evaluations and, basically fine tuning on the data science models that are supporting that. So on a quarterly basis, we're refreshing, you know, our retention curves, margin dynamics, like a lot of things around customer behavior, to just make sure that the early estimates we're making are reliably accurate compared to the
Hmm.
fully baked measures. We always want to be checking in on that, because the decision is happening over here, and if it starts getting out of alignment with the
Yep.
more baked data, you want to make those calibrations. Otherwise, you're making slightly suboptimal decisions more
Right.
quickly, which is always a challenge with, with some of these implementations.
So there's two time frames you mentioned that I just want to emphasize again for people. One is that you're looking at this data pretty much in real time, but daily you are refreshing the offer pool. It's that dynamic, and you're able to do so. And you've got the team and the operations to do that with the automation. And then you're able to feed that into the OfferFit engine just constantly, essentially, to optimize that. And then you're driving optimization functions. You're checking the models for that quarterly uh, to make sure those are on point
Yeah,
in terms of under. Yeah.
the inputs there, right? Yeah, and I think, like, yeah, so those daily, the daily recommendation files, right? So we give the guardrails, and then OfferFit's generating actually those daily recommendation files. So that's actually what's driving the like every day on our website, what is being offered is driven by
Mhm.
today's file. And then, yeah, we just want to make sure that the target metrics are stable, and just even like how who we might be attracting on different products evolves over time. And so we want to make sure that we're checking in to make sure that the lifetime value uh, model outputs on which we're optimizing are still appropriate. Yeah.
So after somebody becomes a customer, I'd like to get into once they're a customer and renewals and keeping customers on board. Is there much in the way there of test and learn and renewal offers? You realize somebody may have been out of whack from the offer you originally thought, and then in terms of now you've got all their actual behavior. They have some experience with your brand. What happens in terms of managing existing customers?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, right? So we're working off of model data and stuff like that on the way in. Obviously, once you become a customer, we have a much better sense of your true consumption patterns and everything else that we can learn just by interacting with the customer. And so I think, like, right now, most of what we do on our kind of renewal and retention efforts, we have a kind of a attrition risk scoring models that the data science team has developed. And so that's also something that, is run through ML ops. I think we refresh it monthly. And so as we're making, pricing decisions for customers that are on our variable products, or thinking about, what are the renewal offers we want to make on folks for our fixed products, um, you know, you know, which offers we're making are dynamically driven by information we have around risk score. So that's kind of what we currently do. Um, just we're using every bit of information we have and how we interact with customers in order to make those assessments. Um, and I think the kind of the in our pipeline, one of the next case studies that we're looking to do with OfferFit is to see how we can use AI decisioning to further enhance how we do that around renewals in particular. I think um there's some things that we do on an expected value basis where there's maybe two realities. The customer could go this way or that way. And right now our data science models kind of collapse that into one expected value. And what that means is we actually still treat customers like in an on average kind of way,
Mhm.
even if it's down to the customer level, the expected value is treating it that way. And I think I'm excited to explore this with OfferFit in particular and my lifecycle team, because the reality is a customer either goes left or right. And
Mhm.
so I think being able to, use more of this kind of experimental structure versus more of an A/B test thing allows us to learn that at a more granular level and operate it at a more granular level. Because even with A/B tests, you're still taking averages of buckets of people. Um, and so yeah, I think I'm really excited about exploring that because I think that's like we we're in growth mode, so we're like like a lot of the attention goes on the acquisition side, but we're obviously looking at like what are the next layers on on our life from our life cycle team to further improve how we retain our customers.
So, Patrick, there is so much quantitative activity going on in your operations. I'd like to step back from Clean Choice and actually talk about you. Um, so, what is your background? How did you build the capabilities to manage such a multifaceted set of engines, all operating off advanced analytics?
Yeah, I can give like the little story arcs. I think maybe it'll make sense if you just heard me talk for the last half hour or so. I talk numbers a lot and stats a lot. So I actually started my career in finance. I was doing like FP&A work
Mhm.
at American Express, and then transitioned over to customer acquisition, where I was leading a large scale direct mail program, acquiring customers onto gold and platinum charge cards, and that's kind of where I cut my teeth.
Yep.
I think, back in the day when I was doing that, like it wasn't called performance marketing yet, but that's
Mhm.
basically what it is, right?
Yeah.
And we were doing, statistical significance tests and A/B testing, you know, um, back then. And so I think that's where it originated from. And just being trained in finance, I just kind of had the spreadsheet mindset. Um, and then layering on growth strategy after my MBA. I worked in the strategy group at Deloitte. And then since then, I've worked at smaller energy companies prior to this one and some startups where I've had various marketing leadership roles, but always skewed towards kind of the more quantitative side. And so it's just about like, how can you measure things? Um, a lot of it is like an economist mindset. So like if you listen to the Freakonomics podcast, like that kind of idea about,
Yeah.
holding everything else constant and changing something and how do you measure? That's always resonated with me. And the, applying it to the domain of marketing and putting the customer at the center, it's always been kind of how I think we can, you can be data driven and make good decisions and deliver good customer experiences and create good products. For me, it's always been the pathway there. Yeah.
So your background and what you're doing comes across with really strong credentials on left brain thinking. Um, but there's also in marketing right brain thinking in terms of creativity, emotion, things like that. And I'm curious, is that something you guys are exploring in Clean Choice from understanding the brand, the meaning of using renewable sources, having people feel some kind of connection and sense of worth because they are paying the premium for it? How does that fit into what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like, and that's the piece that I'm really excited about our strategy in developing the solar farms, right? So, um, like cynically almost, right? You could reduce the customer experience down to we're a line item on your bill, and then most of the customer experience is just what your bill is, right?
Mm.
And so I think as a commodity business, like really what we're like is like what's on what basis can we get the customer to feel something and also make it tangible? I think I alluded to this earlier, right? Like you don't see electricity. It's just you get charged for it after you use it. It's a very weird experience, right? And so what's great is you know, we are physically developing and operating these large scale solar farms. And so there's a lot of cool storytelling we can do around that. And they're in physical locations and you can see them. And so I think there's a lot around that that helps bring our mission to the fore. I think that's also kind of, one of the things I really like about, working with the folks at Clean Choice is that, like, people say mission driven a lot. You do hear that a lot. It's legit here. I think, like, the Slack chatter on, just like, did you see this in the news around renewables, or just the number of employees that have, solar on their home and how they share their dashboards on it, like stuff like that. Um, and how do we, continue to develop that, kind of, emotional connection with the mission and being part of a movement and stuff like that. And I think that, like, I think we've done a really good job of finding those folks so far. And I think what we've been working on a lot is, as we continue to think about, our growth prerogative and moving beyond, our core, like, true enthusiasts, how do we resonate with adjacent customers that maybe you're willing to pay just a little bit more, or,
Mhm.
I'll pay the same if it's green, and those kinds of things. And how do we, continue to engage? And so we're looking at, you know, do we need to explore different content strategies? I think one of the transformations that we're kind of undergoing right now, like, this company, the heritage is very direct marketing.
Mhm.
And so, I'm trying to, think about how do we start shifting towards more of an omni-channel. It's funny. Omni-channel, and kind of, more of a brand or mass market type of an approach as we bring clean energy, to more and more folks.
Yeah, it's an amazing opportunity, and I'm sure a challenge, just to balance from a budget perspective. But the fact that you're actually building solar farms, so that makes it real, for people.
It's so helpful to tell the story. I think it's very conceptual otherwise. And I
Yeah.
think, and like, we think about marketing as storytelling, it really affords a lot from, like, just a content perspective. And it just makes it just tangible for folks, which is super helpful.
And especially the alternative to having a construction project on your roof. I think there's something to that as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think, and we also have customers that do both, actually, which is also really great. So there's folks that have solar, but it doesn't cover all of their energy needs, so they can kind of pair it with one of our offerings. And that's another example of having that understanding and how we can tailor energy products with what we know about
Yeah.
people's consumption patterns look a lot different if they have solar on the roof versus otherwise. And so we can structure things for those folks as well.
Oh, that's interesting. We don't have to get into the specifics of that, but that's very interesting. Because because they're only using you for a smaller percent of their needs.
Right. And then it's at different times of, like they don't
All
need
right.
power during the day, but they need it at night. And so, yeah, so you can, like, structure energy products accordingly. Yeah.
God, the analytics and math is
Yeah, man.
endless, endless. So,
It really is, like, it dovetails with financial services kind of in that way. And yeah, it's very data intensive. You have to be pretty kind of quantitative to do these things. It's cool.
absolutely. Well, let's open it up for questions. I'd love to see if other folks who are listening, we've covered a lot of ground here in terms of Clean Choice's strategy, how it's using analytics, some of the organization and operations, the way they're starting to move to add some more creative and brand stuff to balance the performance marketing, and of course, how OfferFit drives that personalization across an amazing number of variables. Are there any other questions, things we haven't covered that people are curious about?
You know what? I have a question actually about the one of the last topics that you're talking about, Patrick, is as you obviously have to think about your customers in quite complex and quantitative ways, as you've given us some examples of. How do you think about sort of propensity for greenness. I don't know what to call that, but it seems like your ideal customer profile is pretty specific, and the degree to which using renewable energy, I mean, just from the global discourse, we know that that's actually quite can be quite polarizing, and opinions can be quite sort of dramatic. And you mentioned expanding from kind of your core market of green enthusiasts to a wider pool. I would love to hear more about how you think about that, how you find those people. What does it mean to be green adjacent? Like, who are those customer sets and how do you find them?
Yeah, it's a great question. Like I'll go all the way back to kind of the founding of the company, right? Tom, our founder, was in politics previously, and without getting the whole origin story, like had a personal desire to make renewable energy easy for folks. But we started out with a lot of like political affiliations and lists and co-marketing in that way. So that was the starting point. How do you find you partner with sustainability and conservatory,
Yep.
nonprofits. And then, from there, we've, definitely looked at, different kind of out of the box, segmentation tools and built our own models to see kind of, who is interested in this. So a lot of it has been kind of over the years homegrown. One of the things that we're looking at without abandoning, our mission driven, culture here around clean energy, we are thinking about how can solar in particular be interesting for folks in a apolitical way or something like that. And so there's angles around local jobs or the
Mhm.
fact that solar is more techy than fossil fuel plants or something. And so I think there's other avenues of how to figure out how our product offering can resonate with people beyond just wanting to save the planet. I think
Mhm.
we recognize that while that's the mission, it's probably not the only thing that resonates with people that absolutely could really benefit and enjoy being a Clean Choice customer. So part of that I think is about just testing messaging, and then like this traditional you know think of the audience, just STP. Like there's a
Yep.
lot of just some that foundational stuff still applies even if you have a really advanced tech layer sitting on top. I mean, you gotta get the fundamentals right. So it is about who's the right people, how do you find them, and what's the right message. I iterate that with my team all the time when we're doing creative briefs and stuff like that. Got to keep the fundamentals strong.
Yeah, it's funny, Patrick. I've taught for 3 years at Harvard Business School and marketing, and students get restless. They want to just jump right away to advanced digital marketing and AI capabilities. But you're right, you need to have a strategy in the first place. Your segment, your targeting, your positioning, all of that. That's STP, by the way, for those of you who didn't know that acronym. Um, but you gotta get to the fundamentals and make sure you really do have a strategy and especially a positioning, which you're constantly exploring, and you're trying to understand how you can use that to expand your market. So it's good to hear you guys using that, making sure that's driving what you're doing.
Yeah. It's interesting too, like it creates an interesting tension with personalization, right? Because I think um, you want to see what resonates with different individuals and tailor the messaging, but it can't be conflicting or you can't appear to be I don't know the right word, whatever, like not a unified voice. And so I think
Right.
that's a very interesting balance, where Clean Choice is still a brand that kind of has commonalities, but then how do you articulate that in ways that resonate like through personalization? I think that's like a very interesting, like thing to balance and how do you swing from one side to the other and stuff like that.
Yeah, and some of the personalization is maybe not only changes in message, but just simply personalization of where am I in my journey of thinking about it and buying it. And so it's understanding it's just personalized in terms of my trajectory. of getting my head around, as you said first, this concept that I can choose where I get energy from, and that I can choose green, and that I can think about, possibly a fixed price product. So, there's different dimensions of personalization. Some of it is tailoring the message, it's tailoring the price, but it's also tailoring to where you are in your learning and understanding along the way. So there's many different dimensions. Any other questions out there? We've covered a lot of territory. Nate appears again.
Yes, I was appearing again just to say it doesn't look like we have any more questions. This is a really fascinating conversation. I certainly learned a lot that I didn't know about the complexities of the energy market. And as you said,
Yeah.
David, how marketing fundamentals apply, and then how all the modern tools, including AI tools, apply. That was really very interesting. So I just want to thank you, David, again, and thank you, Patrick, for joining us and for this fascinating conversation.
Yes, definitely, Patrick. Thank you. I learned a ton as well.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thanks to everyone who joined. David and Nathaniel, nice to see you.